Hello, all, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Teachings from My Dad. Today, we have a very interesting personality from the field of cricket and sports, the very famous cricket sports personality and commentator, Mr. Gautam Bhimani. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us for this unique podcast called Teachings from My Dad. Thank you once again from your entire busy schedule to join us for this podcast, sir.
My pleasure. I'm so glad to finally made it happen. It was supposed to happen a few days ago, but I'm
Yes.
glad. I'm glad we managed to get it in.
Perfect. And I think you're sitting in a very perfect environment, a lot of family memories there, I can see, with a lot of photos. Gautam Bhimani is the son of the very veteran cricket commentator, late Mr. Kishore Bhimani, who unfortunately passed away in 2020. So this is a tribute to him as well, this episode. So we're going to have a different conversation from the childhood of Gautam Bhimani, what he has learned from Mr. Kishore Bhimani and various things in this podcast. So let's start off with the first question. So how was your childhood like? So you have any siblings? How was your dad like, your mom like, where you grown up with? How was your childhood like, if you can tell our viewers?
Well, it was obviously it was a childhood that was riddled with a lot of cricket, and that's how it came for the future. Only child, so as a result of that, everything that happened around me, I would imbibe. It would be all mine. Fortunately, we lived in an era when there was no internet, so there were no distractions. So everything was completely focused on what life had to offer, and in most cases, it was the outdoor, it was sport, it was reading books, and for me, I mean, which was different from other kids, it was being able to go and watch cricket matches. And those days, it's something you look forward to. Now you have dose of it throughout the year, not just cricket, all other sports. But in those days, all sports came in little doses. So there was a test match that would come, and you knew the next one would come around 1 year later, sometimes maybe more. If there was a table tennis championship, which we had in Calcutta, 1975, the World TT. That was again something new to get exposed to because a new indoor stadium had been built. So we went and watched that, which is right next to the Eden Gardens. So
Perfect.
basically, getting sport sort of injected into your veins was what childhood was pretty much all about.
Wonderful, sir. So very nice to hear. And you all are brought up in Kolkata, and I'm sure your knowledge skills. So even Mr. Gautam Bhimani is a quiz master like me. I have attended his quizzes when I was young. So very nice to have him here. Let us start off with an incident from your childhood where even now when you think back, you say, "Oh, it's a perfect learning from your dad." What is the first thing which comes to your mind?
Well, I think one of the things that I got as an early learning, and again, like I mentioned earlier about sport not being common, travel was also not that frequent necessarily, and yet for my dad, it was comparatively frequent if you look around with people around him, because there were industry professionals, there were people who did all sorts of things, but didn't necessarily travel that much like you do these days. I mean, now people go off, jet off for a boat. I'm not talking about the last year or so, but before that, you'd jet off for a board meeting to New York. You'd go for a presentation to Hong Kong. You'd go for an advertising conference to Bangkok. Those things really didn't exist. Those. So if you were a traveler, it meant that you were a little bit unique. And for my dad, 1972, um, I was young, but I remember that, I used to remember him. My memory of a father going to work is like with any other father, he goes to work at so and so time and he comes back. He has slightly different timings. But on this occasion, he was going to work with two large suitcases and not going to be coming back for a long time. And as a young kid, you don't have a sense of perspective on time. So he would go back, and he came back after a long time. And I was asked later, I found out it was the Munich Olympics that he went to cover. Then, of course, came cricket tours. 76 was the first one that was noticeable for me, because by then I had got an interest in cricket. I'd actually gone and watched cricket at the stadium by then. And here he was going off for months on end. And those were not tours where you suddenly thought of coming back. It was not tours where you would get on a Zoom call and talk to someone. It was
Correct.
also not a situation where you would talk to people regularly. There would maybe be a weekly call, uh, but you'd look forward to letters that would come. And of course, radio would be there because that's the medium you'd listen to not only his commentary, But that's how I would keep track of what was happening. And it was quite a historic tour from India's perspective in the West Indies. So that was again an incident when I remember when he was um, leave. In fact, when both of them were leaving, my mom also traveled quite a bit, and
Okay.
she was traveling with him in 78, 79, or 77, 78. Uh, India's tour of Australia, 5 test matches against grandparents for a couple of months, or maybe a month and a bit. And that for me was a big learning because I couldn't fathom that because they're professionals. And I realized that it's not that they were abandoning me. I had my own time to sit and introspect. I started writing a book at the age of six and a
Okay.
half. It never got published, but it didn't matter. I said I have to do
Okay.
something. I love this gadget called the typewriter. And I used to just sit in front of it and keep bashing on it. Initially just rubbish. And then eventually I actually wrote some 20 to 30 pages of a novel where all the characters were foreigners because that's what I'd grown up reading in Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys.
Correct.
But the big learning from that was that, you know, why they're traveling and to be able to stand on my own 2 feet and not feel as if that, you've been left alone and in this big bad world. There are people around you. There is still something to clutch to, and you can discover a creative side to yourself. So the side to myself that involved a lot of writing and of course continuing to love the game blossomed in that.
Worked in Bahrain and Dubai, and we were part of a joint family. So I think these things we learn only later on after after when we grow up. Okay, let's start off with your dad's career, veteran sports commentator. How was his work ethics like? What was his personality? What you learned from him, and which you carried forward even now during your professional life?
Well, I think one of those was, of course, very often in professions which are passed down, and in my case, it's passed down accidentally. Sometimes it's deliberately passed down. So there'll be a doctor, and the doctor will pretty much tell his son or daughter that, look, you are following in my footsteps, right? This is an application form for medical school. You will go, you will apply, and that's what you'll be. Same thing happens in for engineers, many other technical
Correct.
professions. In other cases, the child sees the father and or the mother and says, okay, I have to become what this parent of mine has become, and I will make the effort. But in a third case, which was what it was in my case, I just, as I said, that's why I used the term, the love for cricket was injected into me. It wasn't told to me that, listen, I'm working in cricket, this is what you need to do. So for him, it was just his own lifestyle was covering the game. He covered it slightly differently from everybody. And I think that's the one big lesson I learned from his style of covering. Even in those days, today, of course, we have a plethora of news channels and we have people covering sport for sometimes not all the right reasons, and covering news also for not always the right reasons. But even in those days, you had situations where people would be wanting to look at, okay, listen, get us some stories. Today, typically you'll be told, get a scoop, get a story, find out who's eating what, find out what's happened on the sidelines. Whereas for him, he realized that it was about the way he wrote and how he would describe a place, and for the people to pick up the paper and be able to be transported to a place just through his writing or through his commentary. And he developed a relationship with players which was maintaining a certain distance, and that was the biggest thing that was passed on to me. I'm still friendly with a lot of cricketers, but I don't have a single one of them on my speed dial unless they choose to share a contact with me.
Mhm.
Whereas there are many others, colleagues of mine, which I'm not saying is a wrong thing, but who have this extra proximity to sports people, and they use it to their own advantage. That's fine. I'm not saying that's the wrong way. It's just that what I saw my dad do, which was, he kept to himself. If he had to do an interview, he would politely ask. If it was set up for him, he would do it. He wouldn't run after one. He would not be hanging around in hotel lobbies saying, no, 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 I'm waited 4 days for this. I have to get it. When I get it, I will do the best of it and it'll be better than anybody else has done. So the same way, I'm I don't think I'd ever be able to work in a news channel, to be honest, um, because I wouldn't be able to go running after something. I would keep an eye out or a ear out for a story, and I'd be able to put it together to the best of my ability, but not to be able to chase it and pull something out of it that doesn't exist. So write a headline for something that doesn't exist. So that was again something that he subconsciously or sometimes unconsciously maintained, and that's even today. If you ask cricketers, they'll of that era, they
Correct.
remember that about him, and they say that's the relationship we had. We would read something about it, and we knew that it was, if something was written critically, it was written for the right reasons. It would not just be criticism for no reason at all. It would not be a phone call in the middle of the night saying, give us a quote. It would be me as a journalist doing my job, you as a sports person doing your job. The two don't always have to mix more than required.
That actually leads me to the next question, because most cricketers, all the famous cricketers of that era, still remember your father's articles, his commentary. So, what was his working style? What did you observe when you were small, when you were young? How was his working style that still people remember? It's different style of writing. I have read some. I am still not that from that era, but still I have read some, and I've seen many people. I've seen the Tendulkars, the Gangulis, everyone still praising Sunil Gavaskar, all praising your dad's commentary. So if you can throw a light for our viewers, what was his style? Like how was he so different and people still remember him even now?
I think it was just to find the right words to describe something. It obviously command over the language helps, and these days it's evolved into command over different languages. So that's why I always believe that you need to be 100% fluent in whatever language you're broadcasting in. I mean, for me, I wish growing up I had that much more command over, say, Hindi, which I don't. I speak the language, I speak it colloquially, I've done shows in it, I've done interviews in it, but I wouldn't hire myself to do a Hindi broadcast because it's something that you need to be well versed in. So you had the Hindi commentators of that time, Ravi Chaturvedi, Sushil Doshi from the 70s, who have never been replaced. You don't have a Ravi Chaturvedi and the Sushil Doshi today. You have everybody speaking Hindi because the Hindi broadcast is meant to be reaching out to a bigger audience. So any ex-cricketer, whatever level of Hindi they speak, they will go out there and become commentators, which I actually feel is not right. I fully agree that any sport should be broadcast across languages, across mediums. But if you have someone doing it in a particular language, they should be so fluent in the language that they blow you away. So similarly, I think that was what his fluency, and he passed it on to me. Command over the language, using the right words, not such a big word that someone won't understand, but just finding the right metaphor to describe something and basically transporting you there. That's the whole thing. That's what I again imbibed when I got into television myself. That if I'm doing something for a viewer, how can I take him or her to where I am without making them feel that you're talking down to them? You know, I can easily stand on a beach in the Caribbean and go, here I am in Barbados reporting to you, and the feeling is that I'm here and you're not. No, the idea is I'm here. I'm actually so lucky to be here. But come on, why don't you all join me here? And I can take you on a little tour, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's around here and how I'm so lucky to be here. And that's the kind of message that you need to continuously portray to people. So they get a feeling that they're joining you there and they're being transported either through words in print or through words in radio or through words and pictures in television. So I think that was a very key learning.
Very nice. Has he ever told you why he joined this profession? What was his passion? As in, how did he come to this profession? Because it's very different that time to come into a cricket's commentator or cricket journalist. So, what was his? How did he came to this profession?
Well, obviously, I mean, he was sort of passionate about the sport, but he was never a sports reporter to start with. He was a political reporter. He went to London School of Economics. He did political science. That was basically his thing. The World War era, politics,
Hmm.
um, writing about it, covering it, talking about it. So once he came back from LSE, uh, he joined the Statesman, and at one point in time, he was asked only as a stand-in to cover a cricket match or a cricket tour. He went to the Munich Olympics, which turned out to be more political than sporting at the end of it in 72, and 71 tour of West Indies as well, where he was not necessarily supposed to go, but he just almost accidentally stumbled upon it, found a liking for it, found that, okay, he could translate whatever other passions he had into sport. And obviously, you've got to have a knowledge of it. You've got to have an understanding of it. That pretty much came to being. But it was not necessarily that he had every stat in his head. No. I mean, today we have, you can just get onto the internet and find out stats. Those days you couldn't. So he had to substitute that for saying that, look, I want to describe Kundappa Vishwanath's 85 in terms of the kind of words that I can put across, how he played it, rather than saying that, no, it was 85 of 125 balls, and it was only the third time that he got into the 80s, and he's the fifth highest scorer in that particular calendar year, and 15 other people have scored higher than him. He didn't have a head for numbers in that sense like that, but it didn't matter because it was the words that mattered, and he would occasionally leave blanks to say that this was his sixth Test 100. Obviously, you would have a statistician and a scorer in the box, but in case he didn't, it wouldn't bother him. He would leave the blank. The person at the back end would, when he was filing the copy, would fill it in for him. So that was basically his initiation into it, and it sort of continued.
We have actually a lot of young viewers. I highly recommend you all Google Kishore Bhimani's articles. You will learn the way of different writing of cricket and other things. Coming to the next question, sir. Let me ask you a fun question. Any incident where you were so angry with him during your childhood, but later on realized that was actually a very valuable lesson?
Well, I don't think there's ever been that kind of a situation, but the one incident that always comes to mind where it was not necessarily that I was angry with him, but it was probably angry with myself. And he would sort of listen to whatever I had to say, and he would give in to my wants. And if I had to change that particular incident and maybe a few others along the way, I would have hoped he would be more persuasive and insist. So it was 1983 World Cup, which I was in England for. He was obviously working on it, and I was just there as a tourist. I had gone to the States for a month on a holiday, and then I was spending time in England watching a few games. And one particular game before I had to come back because school was starting on the 22nd of June, I remember. And just before that, he said, listen, we've got tickets to a game at India playing Zimbabwe at Tunbridge Wells. And we've got some friends who are taking us in a car. We're going to drive down. It's a lovely place to see something slightly different. Right? Because I'd obviously watched a lot of cricket at Eden Gardens. I'd watched cricket at the Wankhede Stadium. I'd gone to Madras, which was Madras at the time, and watched cricket over there. Delhi as well as a child. I'd gone to watch Ranji Trophy cricket. But I'd not seen cricket in your lifetime, but you won't always get to see a top quality World Cup match happening in a sleepy little village green like Tunbridge Wells. So let's go. I said, but Zimbabwe playing? I mean, they're not even like, for me, I want to see Australia and West Indies and Pakistan and England and India. That's it. No one else. Even Sri Lanka were not were really nobody then. And Bangladesh definitely were nobody. And Zimbabwe definitely were nobody. They were from Africa. I mean, So anyway, I insisted, I threw a tantrum. And the same day, there was another match happening at Lord's, which was Australia, West Indies. And I insisted on going to watch that game because I said, I've never been to Lord's. And he said, okay, fair enough. He called a few people, got us some tickets, and we went and watched a very good game at Lord's. I got to see Lord's for the first time. But as it turned out, India Zimbabwe, Tunbridge Wells, Kapil Dev 175, all that took place. There was no coverage of the game. You could have possibly seen it was to actually be at the ground. And I had tickets. I had a car. I had a lift. I would have been there and watched the entire game. I chose not to. So if that way I had to be angry, I wished he had just turned to me and said, no, I'm sorry. You absolutely have to come where I'm going.
So you missed a huge opportunity of the vintage Kapil Dev 175. Dads are generally selfless most of the dad. Even my dad was very selfless. How's your dad with your family, extended family? How was he at home apart from his profession? So we spoke about his profession, but how was he as a father, as a husband, and a family man?
Well, it was always, I mean, he would always include everyone in everything. It would always be, right from the time he got married to my mom. My mother was exactly the opposite. Uh, Mom and I ate everything that walked and crawled. So it was difficult for him to adjustment. Really eat it. He adapted a little bit, but he was fine. It's not that he said, "Listen, I can't take this." Obviously, we would make sure we wouldn't smelly fried fish being fried in the kitchen while he was sitting there, because that can be smelly for even a hardcore non-vegetarian. So it was just about being sensitive to his tastes and things like that. But otherwise, he would always be all inclusive. His first thought would be what we would like. So if we were going on a holiday, it would be my choice, mom's choice, and then if it fitted with him, great. He would both be along. Of course, there would be a lot of holidays that would be tied up with cricket. So if we were going to Australia, we would make a holiday of it there. If it was England, we'd make a holiday of it there. Those days you didn't necessarily have direct flights, so we'd try and make a holiday of wherever you were hopping from. So it would be Copenhagen one time, it would be Bangkok another time, Singapore another time, Dubai another time. So all these places would be turned into 3-4 day holidays en route to wherever we were going to watch some cricket and, of course, see the places around there. And it would be important for us to go out there and see places. And that would be the most important thing.
Very nice. Any bad day at work for your dad, which you remember now and you take it as a learning? Do you remember any such instance where you had a very bad day at work and that has become your, okay, now let's not repeat that. Let's do something different. Have you had such instance?
Well, um, not really anything that is a single bad day at work, but it's a it's a it's all kinds of learnings that you recall when, uh, I guess, a bad day at work would be to have someone who comes and says something about you publicly. So he's had situations like that, run-ins with top cricketers, Imran Khan being one very prominently, where they had a disagreement over something, and it literally reached the front page of a magazine when his picture and Imran's picture were on the cover, and they were like, accusations being thrown left, right, and center. I'm not sure the exact content of what had happened, but I guess that could be constituted as a bad day of work. But what he took out as a learning from that is, don't let it fester. Pick up the phone, speak to the person, get it sorted, and even though things might have come out, there's nothing, no substitute for being able to talk about something and sort it out immediately. And I think that's what he did very, very quickly. And it was sorted out in no time. That if I might have said something or done something that I feel didn't go down well, don't let it fester, right? I mean, pick up the phone, talk to the person, say nice things, move on at a time.
Any mistake? So generally, some dads would have made some mistake. Obviously, all are not perfect. Any mistake from your dad which you feel, okay, now I've taken it forward and I am not doing that to my children? Any mistake? See, like my, for example, some dads would have not invested well, would have not looked at the future, would have not various other types of mistakes, property mistakes, whatever can be there. Money matters. Any mistakes from your father that, okay, I've learned from that and I don't want to repeat it in my life?
Well, to be honest, no. I mean, I wish I could pick on things like that. As I said, there have been a lot of learnings and lessons along the way. But um, if anything, if anything, it's a bit in reverse. That
Oh,
um, I wish, like, at least since you gave money as an example, I think it's always a good example in terms of investing, using
correct.
it wisely, making it grow. I mean, journalism is not a highly paying profession, and yet he managed to find a way to take us for holidays, take us on cricket tours, never felt wanting for anything. Being an only child, if I ever wanted something, I would always end up getting it. I didn't have huge demands, so I kind of saved him there. But still, whatever it is I wanted, if it was a new Lego set, if it was a new, brand new book, I would end up getting it, whatever happened. So that was okay. But the thing was, in terms of being cautious with uh, money, for example, he did it to a fault, and I think that was brilliant. I wish I had imbibed it that much from the start. I've done it more and more as life has gone on. But in my 20s, late 20s, I was probably too whimsical and looked at him and said, no, 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 why couldn't, I mean, what is this? What's wrong with spending so much and so thing? And he would tell me, no, I think there's a reason why you shouldn't. And occasionally I would not listen to him and go ahead and spend something and maybe come to regret it later on. But nothing to the extent that has been. It's all been okay. Let me sit and think about it. Why did he say that? And not because you want to be tight-fisted, but because you want to be careful. That fine line between the two, and I think that line was the one that, without actually a mistake, it's from my own mistakes that I've learned, but it's come down from him.
Such important learnings, I think we all get from our fathers in a direct or indirect way. Any such awe-worthy moment, like, oh, when you saw your dad, oh, that's my dad, like any such moments? Because I'm sure he has done so many things in the field of cricket, not only cricket and other things, but any moment you felt, oh, that's my dad?
Well,
Can
I
you
think
remember?
to be honest, it was all the time. I mean, again, one sees it because in a profession like this, there is tangible evidence of it. So, if a person is the son of a banker, a brilliant banker, an investment banker, whatever it is, there's no tangible evidence unless someone goes and picks up a. So, I don't think even I'm aware of awards and recognitions, but I don't think it was any of those that really struck out. It was just seeing him perform that made me were all worthy moments. I guess if I had to pick one of them, it would be when I joined him for horse racing commentary for the first time.
Oh,
Because yes, I've seen him do cricket commentary, football commentary, hockey commentary, growing up. As I said, tennis as well. But when I was old enough to be able to go race course, and I knew that from the 70s, on a horse as well, and but I never got a chance to actually go there and go to the commentary box. So the first time I managed to actually go and sit on the rooftop commentary box, that I guess was an awe-inspiring moment, because I could not figure out how you can actually remember all these 10, 15 horses, all their colors, which is the name, who's leading from a distance. I had binocular, I could see it and be able to do that. I mean, I could imagine how cricket is done. I would sit and imitate him in a cricket commentary box or football. And I had this little tape recorder where I would record myself doing commentary. But horse racing, I couldn't even imagine. He told me once, you want to just try it out here, take a tape recorder. I'm like, but oh, okay. I couldn't do it. So again, I found that was a special skill something that you just imbibe. And I found that quite inspiring.
that's very nice action. Many viewers will not know that hearing commentary as well. So truly versatile. Penultimate question: any regret you have not doing for your father? Anything since he passed away
Well,
very recently? Any regrets?
I think, I wouldn't like to call it as a regret, but again, it's something that I wanted to do at some point in a show with him.
Ah,
I mean, we've obviously done a lot of things together. He's seen me do my shows. I've seen him do his shows. We've traveled together for it. I've sat with him. He visited me on tour in the mid 2000s, if he happens to be in the city at the same time, or he's made a trip out and come and join me when I've been doing my work. So no regrets in terms of him seeing me work or me. But if there is one, I guess it was that we never really got to do a show together. And we had talked about it. There were some plans of, the only pairing in the world. And this would, I'm sure someone can fact check this, but I'm fairly certain of it. The only cricket playing father-son pair in the world who have both done test match commentary. And
Hmm.
and I'm fairly certain that that be very few in the world. I know, for example, Tony Cozier, his son is also in cricket, but he's not a commentator. He's a statistician and a producer now, and I'm good friends with Craig. But very rare to come across, and I certainly haven't come across one yet, is a father-son pairing, both of whom are not cricketers, but both of whom who have done regular commentary at the highest level for Test cricket. So with that in mind, I had hoped to do some kind of a show where we both reminisce about it and we chat about it. And obviously, it's easy to put together. It's like, I mean, you've got the medium, you've got YouTube. Start a YouTube channel and do it. But I guess both of us were too lazy to get it done, and we were like, okay, it'll happen, it'll happen, it'll happen. And of course, commitments meant that you had to find that time, and the fact that I didn't live in the same city.
Final question. How are you as a father? What have you taken from your father and passing it on to your children?
Well, um, probably I've taken pampering from him.
Okay.
He was always the good cop, and I am the good cop. So that's whether it's good or bad. I think it always has to happen. Not that my mom was ever the bad cop, but she was the stricter one. She's the one who had to actually say something, which my dad couldn't. He never knew the word. Whatever I wanted, it was yes, absolutely. If I wanted to bunk school for a day, and uh, he knew that I had put the thermometer on the light bulb and shown it to be a lot higher than it was. And my mom would be like, "Oh my God, you're burning up with fever." And my dad would be like, "It's okay, fine. I'm going to get you this movie and we'll sit and watch it together in the afternoon," because I hadn't done this homework. So that would be our little secret. But and I think my mom still doesn't know. But anyway, uh, it's one of those things. So I think I've kind of taken that part of him, and I tend to be a little too lenient on my son, but that's okay. Someone has to be, and there's always a good cop.
Perfect. Perfect ending. Anything you want to do differently, like how your dad did? You want to branch out to other sports, or how is it?
No, I'd
Anything
love
coming
to.
up now? If you can tell your viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always open to it. Some of my best memories in sport have been outside cricket. Cricket has almost at some point in time become like, it's part of your DNA. But other sports are a little more of an adventure. Covering multiple football World Cups have been fantastic. Doing Wimbledon commentary has been outstanding. Love tennis. It's still, if there's live sport on, I guess maybe because it's too much cricket, and there's a live football game on, there's Formula One on, there's tennis on, and there's cricket on. If I had to choose just one, I would probably pick the tennis to watch. So if I got a chance to work on it, never pass it up. So I don't necessarily have a plan. It's always things are evolving.
Correct.
But something or the other will come up. I guess the next thing, hopefully, that travel will resume and we can start watching cricket the way we remember it.
Perfect. I think your family, your dad, and you are like perfect journalists, the perfect cricket commentators. I highly recommend all viewers go Google Mr. Kishore Bhimani's articles, read about it. I think the level of the English, like Sir said, the different style of writing, and everyone loves Gautam Bhimani's shows. I'm sure you're all watching it now in IPL and various other things which he does. So thank you so much, Gautam Bhimani, for joining us from Teachings from My Dad. It is a perfect tribute to the veteran cricket sports commentator. Not only cricket, today we came to know he does so many other sports commentary. We only remember cricket because it's the most popularized, but a tribute to late Mr. Kishore Bhimani. Thank you all so much for joining in. My name is Vinay Mudaliar, and thank you so much, Mr. Gautam Bhimani, for teachings from my dad.
And I must add, just before you end, that I think it's wonderful that you're doing this, because there's no better place we get teachings from, and it's a great tribute to your dad as well. So well done on doing this.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.